Hello there. Welcome to the Recode Podcast. This podcast exists to support the stories and the content of my new book titled Recode: 8 Mind Hacks for the Small Business Owner. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Recode Podcast. Today, I have in the studio with me Katelyn Johnson, who is Managing Director at AmFam Ventures. Welcome, Katelyn.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Emmanuel.
Of course. I met you a few weeks ago at the insurtech summit in New York City. And I sat there in the audience listening to you on the panel. I'm like, I gotta have her on the podcast. What a brilliant mind you have about these things. So I'm really excited to have you in the studio. Well, I thought I would share your mind with at least my audience in the way that I can. So let's get started. I have a lot of questions for you. Tell us how you got here. Is there anything in your career that sort of prepared you for the role that you're playing today? So just bring us up to speed about your career journey.
Yeah, so I'm like an incredibly type A personality individual. And so if you would have asked me when I graduated college, I had like a 10-year plan. None of that has panned out what I planned. But I think absolutely every step of the way I learned something that I've translated and carried with me as I've like just continued my career. So I'm a recovering mechanical engineer. I'm pretty sure I knew the first day of mechanical engineering school that I was not going to be in it for the long haul. I remember asking my mechanical engineering 101 professor if I didn't like machines, what should I do with my degree?
What
and
now?
He was like, please switch majors. But I was just too stubborn and I just liked math and science too much. And really engineering is a problem solving degree. And that was what really drew me in. So, I did that. And then after school for about 4.5 years, I was a medical device engineer. So in a regulated industry. And I'm just like too much of a social extroverted individual. So engineering was not a great long-term fit for me. I really love to, I'm a big dreamer and I like to condense thinking. And then I like to work with other people to kind of implement it versus me doing the implementation. So I would say like engineering, actually, it taught me what I didn't like a lot more than what it taught me, like, and as well into like what I do like and it was kind of a North Star in helping me ultimately figure out, wow, I really do like venture capital. And so it kind of led me to that and watching way too much Shark Tank. To a point where I was like, oh. So then I went to business school, and then coming out of business school, I hopped right into tech investing and at first was at a broad B2B enterprise shop that would invest in enterprise technology, and then kind of winnowed from there, then went into fintech and then further specialized into insurtech, and been doing that the last 6 years and love it.
So that's very interesting. So now that you're in insurtech, do you feel like it's got value for the insurance agents? And I speak because I'm an insurance agent, right? So for our group, how should we perceive insurtechs? Are they here to help us? Because I use some insurtech products. I'm out there. I'm very tech forward. But in general, when we talk about our future, should we be worried about insurtech? How much should we embrace that space?
So I think you guys should totally embrace it. I would not be worried about it. I think that 7 to 10 years ago, the mindset, and probably still is, oh, we can probably replace brokers and agents, right? Like, I think people were very cynical and they were like, let's just go direct. And you saw what has happened to the first wave of people. It's been a flop. And everybody underestimated the power of a human relationship and the connectivity to be able to pick up the phone and know, hey, Emmanuel's my guy. I know that if something happens to my home, my car, my business, that I can pick up the phone and he's going to help me through it. And he's also going to be this outsourced risk manager for me to help me get placed in the right products so that I'm not vulnerable in my time and needs and I'm not underinsured or self-insuring when that was never the intention. And so I think definitely on the commercial side, as you go upstream and get more mid-market,
Yeah.
policies are getting way too complex. I don't think that there's any threat of disintermediation. I think
Okay.
people had grand visions of disintermediating on like personal lines and some like small business commercial.
Right.
But I firmly believe, and so does AmFam Ventures, that the agents are not going anywhere anytime soon. And so what it is our job is to do is to find technology that can help make you guys more efficient. Whether you're a more sales oriented agent and you
Right.
want a lot of the administrative burden stuff to
Yes.
be outsourced, what type of tooling can we provide and help fund to get into your hands? Or maybe you're a more like customer oriented individual, and then it's like, how do we get like the sales type of tools into your hands so you can automate that portion of your business and focus on, you know, where you really enjoy spending your time. So
Oh,
I would say maybe there are folks out there that still want to promote disintermediation, but I wouldn't feel
yes.
threatened by it because I think you guys are here to stay.
Well, listen, you said it just the way I would like to hear it. It sounded great. We're going to be around forever.
That's right.
Hallelujah.
That's
But
right.
I have to ask you, as you know, you're right where you need to be. You
Yeah.
articulated so well, and I can feel the passion about the subject. Has Farm Family always been in that space, or is this new? The
Yeah. So our fund is AmFam Ventures, and we are an early stage fund focused on things that are impacting the future of insurance. So bread and butter is obviously things that fall into the insurtech category,
okay,
and then we have things that are more ancillary and adjacent that are, you know, fintech, broader fintech applications, broader enterprise applications, prop tech applications. So we are looking for both obvious as well as non-obvious investment opportunities that will
nice.
impact the future of insurance. So really excited about that. And we got our start about 10 years ago. So Dan Reed, the head of our fund, was sitting inside of American Family and said, "Hey, we should really have an insurance company or a venture fund, sorry, because as an insurance company, we invest into venture funds,
Okay,
but we want to be able to isolate and target the types of companies that are going to be material in terms of pushing the future of insurance forward. We want to be on that
absolutely.
bleeding edge." And so with that, I think AmFam, to their credit, incredibly forward thinking, and said, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense." And out of Fund One, they were figuring out what they were doing, and by the end of it, they had kind of dialed in and figured it out. And so they co-led Ring, which exited to Amazon. So a lot to
Interesting.
be proud of ever since really the earliest of days.
So this is very interesting. So I'm one of those humans like you, right? A type. I'm not a one-trick pony. I get bored doing the same thing. So while I have your attention, I want to get on the investor side of our business.
Mm-hmm.
Can I pick your brain on how to pick the good ones to put money in?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
So guide me a little bit. How do you determine the winners from the not so likely to win?
Yeah, well, I would say with everything, there is no obvious winner. Everything has its risks that it takes a long time for a venture fund to season so that you can tell, have they been investing in good quality
Right.
companies or not so much. And I would also say a lot of it comes down to luck, like who just happened to be there at the right time and caught the right break. And so there was a lot of really compelling technology that was just a season or two early
Right.
and couldn't kind of take off. So I would liken that to, you know, Facebook obviously was there at the right point in time, but there
Right.
were a lot of other social platforms that came before them that didn't end up making it for the long haul.
Yep.
So I think that's an analogy I would use, but I would love to understand, like, you know, we could throw up a case study of a company you're looking at, like the things that when I'm assessing an opportunity, the first thing I like to do is to hear straight from the horse's mouth. So I like the entrepreneur to tell me, why are they engaging on this problem? what did they uncover about the market or the issue, like whatever is going on, the dynamic at
Right.
play that was compelling to them, and how severe of a pain point it is.
Hmm.
I always, make this like probably pretty crude analogy, but if somebody came to me and they were like, wouldn't you love an app that like you could push and get a pizza in 30 seconds? And I'd be like, yes, I would love that app. But we have pizza that can get to you via apps in like 10 to 15 minutes. So how much more am I going to pay for like a 30-second pizza thing? Probably not that
I'm
much.
not sure I want the 30-second pizza either.
Exactly. Like what's going on with the 30-second pizza? So yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, that's not a severe pain point.
Correct.
So I always like to get right to like, what is the pain point? I always love to understand the entrepreneur and their background. Like, why are they well positioned to be the one leading the charge here?
Right.
And then we love focusing in on the market. Like, how big of a problem is this? Not like it could be a very severe problem, but it could have a small influence. And so the market might not be that widespread. So in order to take on venture dollars, you want kind of like the ability for this thing to get to $1 billion at some point.
Right.
And so that's usually the rule of thumb. So we focus a lot about market, team, problem. We talk about the competitive landscape. And then we also talk about, how are you making money? So how are you charging people? Is it a percentage, is it like a commission-based sale? Is it a subscription-based sale? Like what are the mechanisms for dollars coming in the door to your company? So those are pretty much like the basics that we like to cover in any pitch to unearth if we think there's something there.
So I'm taking notes, both mental and physical notes here. And the reason for it is you're hitting on the points that I need to learn from as I try to get into this space as an investor. I want to make sure that I understand what it takes to select good products to invest in. But also, I plan to create my own insurtech. But before I go into telling you about what I'm working on, at the New York City Summit, the InsurTech Summit the other day, I met a guy, Raj is his name. I don't know if you guys interacted that afternoon, but Raj created an avatar for insurance agents. So we can use AI tools to communicate with our clients using our voice with our avatar. And it just so happened that he sat next to me and just told me about the product, like, the elevator pitch. And I just grabbed him. I'm like, I want to hear more. I'm here for it. Let's see what this product can do. So that's one. Mm-hmm. Also, now a good friend of mine, Nabby, she's CEO of an insurance company out in Australia. She was there at the event as well. And her and I have been talking and looking at some of the products that she has. So I'll be using some of those tips and guidelines to see what a good fit for me is long term. Now, that leads me to my question. Has AmFam Ventures considered insurtechs that are positioned for Africa or the African market yet?
We are predominantly focused on the US market. However, we will look at worldwide technologies. I don't think we've necessarily done a deep dive in Africa. We've placed a couple of bets in India. Nice. And we haven't invested in anything that is of the insurtech variety out of Europe. So it's really just been the US, and then we've had, one company that we've done in India. So the short answer is no, we haven't really spent a ton of time in Africa, but it is a market that I think is evolving and is a really exciting place to be at the moment.
Definitely. So at least I got your attention, and when I'm ready, I'll put my product in front of you. It's got all the highlights you mentioned. It's got those things, and it will help me organize, kind of the executive summary to make sure it's hitting on all those points. So I really appreciate your insight there. All right, I want to transition a little bit to women in leadership in our industry. And when I saw you speak and heard you, I said, you know what, we need more of this. I'm around women a lot. My team, where I have 20 employees, and predominantly most of them are women. And in our environment, sometimes in the insurance industry, a lot of what we do has got zero tolerance for error, right? You miss an
Right.
apartment number, he doesn't get a bill, the client does not get a bill. You forget to put a middle initial, and they cannot register the vehicle at the DMV, and just on and on and on like that in our industry. Or you omit something, and all of a sudden you're catching an error and omission lawsuit or what have you. So having women and their attention to detail has been one of my good fortunes, and I'm sure a lot of agency owners will say the same. My question for you then is, what can we do to bring more women into the leadership environment in our insurance industry, and talk about some of the work you're doing with your team as well?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question, right? And I think that when I think about that, I think about insurance in general. Like, how does anybody land into insurance? Is kind of the first place I start. And
Right.
to be honest, I don't feel like most people wake up, when they're, in high school and are like, I want to be in insurance. Like, that's
Definitely
not
not.
no, right? You just kind of fall into it somehow. And so I honestly think that there's a giant opportunity to really galvanize the youth in terms of insurance is a great place to be if you're a self-starter and kind of want to almost own your own business and own your own brand out of the gate. In an agency route is a great place to go where you're kind of, you're making or breaking it. You're either supporting a stellar agent and kind of learning the tools of the trade from an apprenticeship model, or you're going out on your own and you're living and dying by off of what you're eating and killing. And so I think it can be wildly attractive for those who have an entrepreneurial spirit, but yet don't want to have to do like a startup or, invent a new whatever it may be. There's an opportunity for them to kind of be a business owner in their own right. And so I really think that there's like folks like that. There are then more traditional jobs where you're part of an organization, part of an entity, aligning on a mission going forward. And so and risk management, I just feel like is a category that like nobody really enters into college or even like post high school or thinking about as acutely as I think could be. So I think that there's an opportunity to catch people a lot earlier in their mental iterations as they're processing, hey, what can I do for my career? So part one is, I think, capturing more youth earlier. And then part two, there's a lot of studies that have talked about how friendly is it for women after they've had children, and is it creating, are they able to have a lifestyle and a work-life balance that supports them being able to do both? And I really do think that insurance is also quite friendly in that regard as well. So to me, I think kind of highlighting, elevating, escalating these things into the forefront would make a material difference. I also think that like when people take a step back and think about hiring, and I think broadly across the US, we've been doing a better job at this. It's to, people tend to hire people that look like themselves. That's a comfortable place to be. And as you get more and more women into leaderships, I think we're starting to see that shift in terms of like women in the organization.
That's true.
Be there. And then the question is for each entity, if they're seeing dropout at a certain point, at a certain level or whatever, it's really questioning what's going on here that's not allowing women to continue to rise.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting the way you articulate those elements. I think it's very important that we think about it on an industry base, on an industry level, but also, as you mentioned, as you alluded to, all of America, and that I hope that we get there worldwide. I see more of that happening in Europe, and I think you're exactly right when you say, we tend to hire people that look like us. I think the more of that's replicated, we'll be able to have a larger pool of women to bring into the leadership role. I've heard about the work that you're doing on your team, mentoring a lot of women making sure that they're focused and driven and intentional about what they get out of their career in this industry. And I applaud you for that. What would you say in general is your leadership style?
What is my leadership style? It's a great question. I think for each individual that I lead, it requires something different of me because they're all so different. But broadly, if I take a step back, it's providing them support where they need support and letting them grow wings where they're more than competent and they're able to grow wings. And so I like to be the biggest advocate for my team members as possible. And that's like a really kind of cheating answer to say, like, who doesn't want to be the biggest advocate for their team? But I really do see my job and my role as to be their champion. How am I helping them block and tackle on a daily basis? How am I helping them knock through brick walls that might be standing in their way? The people who are under my charge, who are using me the best, are the ones that come to me and they say, hey, this is my goal. Can you help me get there? What can we co-create together that'll allow me to like unlock my potential in this area? Right. And then it's like, great, you've invited me into the problem. Help me do this. And so I do think that that's a lot of times is people being intentional about their careers and then using their managers to help them through that is really important. I also think the other thing to be cognizant of is like check your own biases and know your own self. Like I'm an extremely extroverted individual and I tend to process things externally. So I don't know if you've like spent a lot of time thinking about Myers-Briggs. My team just did that earlier this year. But I'm a strong E, and a characteristic of an E is that a lot of external processing. But I work with a lot of I's and they need to do internal processing. So the way I kind of handle that is like, hey, I've got my process. You need to accommodate me in that regard. You have your process. I need to accommodate you in that regard. And oh, by the way, you're an I and you're trying to think about how to be a better version of an I. Why don't I connect you with other people who are I's, who have lived through that and who are further along in their career trajectory that you could maybe learn from? So understanding that, like, I can teach them a little bit the ways of an E, but that's not going to resonate with them as much as it will be somebody who said, oh, I'm an I. I've encountered that before in my career. Here what I did to cope, to work through it, to adjust. So I think it's just understanding that each person is so unique, and being able to help them reach success in the ways that are going to feel most natural and authentic to them.
Absolutely. So the interesting thing about the way you're describing it is it makes absolute sense to me because I feel the exact same way. I model after the servant leadership.
Yeah.
So I can serve you. I exist to serve you, but I want to challenge you to grow, to be the best version of yourself. But I want to make sure that the tools that you need along the way, that I support you in a way that I provide them. And when I see that you're settling for less than you're capable of, I want to challenge you to step up. It's very interesting. Something as basic as getting a driver's license. A lot of times my employees will join the company and I'll just kind of watch them. And every year we sit down and go over goals.
Yeah.
I'll say to them, so why is getting a driver's license not on your goal list this year? They're like, oh, my husband takes me everywhere. I'm like, I understand. God forbid he gets a heart attack. Who's going to get him to the hospital? I mean, it's not that hard. And then they say, well, I'm like, think about it. It's a life skill. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, work on it, get your driver's license. And then when they do it, they feel really proud. Yes. And all of a sudden you realize if you can accomplish something you never thought you could or never really positioned to do, what else can I do? Right. Exactly. And so we just create that environment of, okay, let's try to grow a little bit, stretch ourselves, get uncomfortable, and get on the other side of growth. All of a sudden there's a habit of growth and, constantly doing things to move us forward. Now, you also mentioned Myers-Briggs, and I double as an I and an E.
Ooh.
So the first time I took it years ago, I was a banker at the time. The facilitator of the training program then held my score back. And then she asked me, do you see yourself doubling as an introvert and an extrovert? I said, yes. She was like, oh, okay, then it was correct. Here you go. So I apparently I'm in good company, right? A lot of executives and presidents, and they double as an I and E. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Wow.
But I learned a lot about not judging when I just want to be an introvert
Right.
and my wife wants to talk to me and I don't feel like talking.
Mhm.
I just want quiet.
Yeah.
Sometimes I put on a headphone and listen to classical music and she's talking to me. She's like, I'm talking to you. I'm like, I just need a moment. I just I just want to be an introvert right now. Can I have that? And we've been married over 23 years. So she's
Wow.
learned to give me that space. And then sometimes I'm a chatterbox and I just want to engage and I just want people all day and I'm good. But I've learned that that's my makeup, and
Yeah.
I'm comfortable being either of them. I could be completely silent at an event, and I could mix and mingle and make 1,000 friends. None of it bothers me. I don't feel out of character anymore.
Yeah.
But just hearing you, use that and inspire people in that environment is a in your environment is a very cool thing. Let
Awesome.
me ask you
Mhm.
about our economy and
Yeah.
the hard market that we're experiencing today. I got news yesterday that I saw that says the GDP of U.S. GDP is improving about a clip of about 1.9%
Mhm.
right now, which is better than estimated. Do
Mhm.
you think we're really in declare? Do you think we'll see that this year, this hard market softening?
So it's interesting, right? One of my colleagues was sending out information about there's like an insure recession, which is like an insurance recession.
Right,
We're at like, and then really questioning the premise of like, is the broader US actually in a recession?
right.
I've never been great at econ, so
Yeah,
I will leave that up to the experts to tell us if
right.
we're in a
That's
recession or
right.
not. But I can speak about what we're seeing and feeling in the market, and I think that's the the broader tech companies that are really influencing or heavily influential in the public markets. There is a pullback in past years. They've overhired. They've gotten a little bit fat and ahead of their skis.
Right,
And haven't been really thinking about the expense line because cash was a commodity and it was just so readily available. And now, it's much more expensive to have debt than it's ever been. And so it's forcing constriction. It's forcing people to be more lean. It's forcing prioritization, which I
right,
always think is the healthiest spot to be. It's no surprise that when you look at recessionary periods like after the bubble burst in 2000 and the next couple of years that fell out of there were a strong class of companies because they're built on solid business fundamentals, and you
right.
have founders that are maniacal about being incredibly disciplined. And I think that is so powerful and so helpful, and just bleeds into the culture of the company. And that in self propels things forward. And when you're focused on the right things, the things that matter, it makes a world of difference. And so what we're seeing in the startup landscape is that it is harder to raise than it has ever been,
Hmm,
especially in the later stages like Series B, Series C.
hmm.
And it is hard to get exits. So the folks that are later stage are kind of in a holding pattern and they're just waiting. And they're
Interesting.
using this time to refine their businesses to really make their business fundamentals a lot more solid and
Hmm,
consistent with what is needed to really exit successfully on a public stage. And on the early stage, there's an insane amount of competition in the early stage. A lot of the folks that or don't want to be financing things into later stage rounds of venture have moved
right.
upstream and are focused on the earlier stages. So pricing hasn't been coming down
Hmm,
in this sector as much as, or this stage, I would say, as much as you would anticipate or think. And but I will say round sizes have gotten, I think, smaller. People are trying to be more like show that they have capital efficiency on their
hmm.
mind. And so they're not trying to have the same attitude that was the last 3 years. That was like, I'll raise today and I could raise tomorrow and the next
Right,
day and then next week.
right,
Um,
right.
so that I think broadly is what's going on in the tech side of things. I think manufacturing has continued to hum along,
Yep,
and some of the more, I would say, stable professions
correct.
that like make the economy tick
Yep.
seem to be there. So yeah, that's a little bit of my lens on what's going on in the world right now.
Oh, absolutely. And truth be told, you're my first insurance industry guest on this podcast. So I really was happy to ask that question, kind of get your insight. Whenever I'm talking to an insurance executive or anybody who's been in industry a long time,
Mhm.
or specific spaces like the network group presidents and stuff, I always want to get their take because my view of the industry is always a different view from someone who's looking at a broader spectrum
Yeah.
of the industry. In my world, I see where I'm at like a core. I'm at the core and we're closest to the client. But there's an inner core and then there's an outer core and then there's all the reinsurance and all that
Oh
that
my
happens
gosh.
on the
Yes.
on
And
the
there's like
very exterior.
unprecedented cat losses, and the public markets are down, so everybody's float isn't doing terrific on the investment side of the house.
Mm-mm.
So I think this is going to be a bloodbath of a year for the
Yep.
insurance industry. You're going to see a lot of people talking about pretty meaningful losses. um I think there's still hope. I think that this if people can figure out how to weather this period, there will be an upswing. The insurance will come
Hey,
back for
that's
sure.
that's my message to my team. So I'll play them that part of the podcast. Like she said it, I believe it. Let's go with it. So, Caitlin, what are you reading these days?
I have been, um, oh man, it's at the tip of my tongue, but John Doerr wrote a book that I've been reading a lot about, and that's more on the venture side of the house.
Okay,
Um, I read my Bible every day,
that's good.
and then the other thing that I do is I sometimes I'm in a phase right now where um I'm deep on like the blogs during the work week and during the work day,
That's good.
that sometimes at night I like to kick back with like a nice fantasy read. And so kind of in the nonfiction world these days.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked that question because I've read over 800 books over the years.
Wow.
And it's always interesting when you see a topic that you think, I think I know what this book is about. You see a title like How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? Or whatever, right? You're like, okay, good to great. You're like, I know what he's talking about. Yeah, I get it. Get off the bus or whatever, energy. But you're like, I know. But it's amazing to me that sometimes within the forward, sometimes within
Yeah.
chapter one, I'm
Yeah.
hooked. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I definitely have to hear more. So I've kept that
totally.
habit of a book a week the last 15
That's
plus years.
impressive.
And at first I thought I couldn't do it. I read one book at the airport waiting and it said, hey, it was Brian Tracy, one of his books.
Okay.
And it said, pick a book a week and you'll be ahead of 90% of your industry. I'm like,
I
yeah,
agree with
nobody's
that.
going to do that. I'm
Yeah.
not going
Yeah.
to read a book a week.
Yeah.
But I made the 12th that first year. By
Wow.
the next year, I got to 25. By the third year, I was at a clip of roughly 2 a week and
Wow.
one a week, I should say. And then I roughly got to the 50. Then 50 became a natural cadence for me. I had a long drive. I don't work
So
out
you
with a
do
book.
audiobooks?
Yes, mostly audiobooks.
Yes.
Then there are some books that are just amazing. I have a library everywhere I sit. So this is my conference room. I have a library at home. I have a library in my office. There's a library everywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's some books I enjoy the audio so much, and then I pick up the physical copy because I want to highlight certain things that I learned from the book. But and they say you become what you consume. So
Yes.
having read all these books, I ended up pouring out my own 3 books over the
Wow.
years. So it's always interesting to me as an avid reader. Whomever you're talking to, they seem to throw a book at you or somehow another book to read just makes its way. So I'm going to give you one
I would love
in the
that.
insurtech space that you're in. I want to recommend Scary Smart by Mo
Scary
Gadar.
Smart. Okay.
Yes, I'll send you a screenshot of it. And the reason I love the book, he's doing a great job of first scaring me about the AI space, but
Oh,
he's
wow.
also walking us through how we can potentially get a hold of it and how we should actually take advantage of it. We don't
Yes.
want to. I don't want to be an insurance agent or a business owner that
Mm-mm.
does not want to fully engage and want to kind
Mhm.
of dip one toe in. He says in the future, the agents and the business owners and actually the humans who are able to embrace it and utilize it,
I agree
they're
with
going
that.
to be ahead. It's not going to send us all out of business. It's not going to
No,
take our
it's tech
lunch.
enabling
But the
you to be
lawyer,
more efficient. Yeah.
exactly. If
Yes.
you're able to integrate it and use it well, you'll do better than the ones who do not. So it's a
Yes.
very interesting, but he goes really deep. So I'll send you a copy of
I
it.
would love, yeah, that would be
Okay.
amazing.
So we're already over a half hour. We clearly can go for days if you give us the clock, if you open the clock. But one of the things I love is that I've learned over the years. Every year I read a book or two about timing and managing time, and one of
Yeah.
the phrases that have stayed with me is that time is elastic. You can stretch and expand it to fit whatever you consider
Oh, I love
important.
that.
However, I like to keep whatever I do on the podcast, a book I write, I like to keep it short and sweet. So I'd like to walk you to the last question that I ask
Yeah.
all my guests. Old world, new world, right?
Mm.
You and I have got the chance to experience both of them. Is there anything in the old world that you would like to keep in the new world? We know things are changing fast in our world. What would you like to keep from the old world
Yeah.
in the new world?
Human touch and empathy. I just feel like, the human emotion is just such a spectrum, and it really is difficult for a machine to
Right.
fully encompass that.
Yes.
And I think as long as we don't lose the personal touch and lose that connectivity and lose that empathy, compassion, and care for one another, I think we can do really powerful things with technology at our fingertips. And so I'm super excited for the new world. But I do think that we can't lose those roots of care and compassion.
Oh, I absolutely 100% agree with you. And I think that if we find a way, right,
Mhm.
to teach AI, they call it being sentient. I'm not
Yes.
sure it's all the
Yes.
way there. I heard this morning that Elon Musk has already owns a company or invested in a company that allows you to plant a chip in your brain,
Oh,
and we can all become cyborgs. Hey, listen, I'm an early adopter. I might sign up for that.
guys, Elon, to bet on him might not, he's got a great
Yeah,
track
exactly.
record, so might not be a bad
Exactly.
idea.
I, I will volunteer as soon as I figure out that it's safe. I want to see what happens when I become a cyborg. It's a great way to stay ahead. I've got FOMO when it comes to technology, so anything I can do to
Yeah.
be an early adopter, I would love to. So again, I have to ask you, your brilliant mind.
Yeah.
What else is on your brilliant mind these days?
Oh man. Yeah, I think we've been just, along with, this is probably going to be such a cliche, but along with the rest of the world, trying to figure out what this, I think we're truly at, just like the internet was a game changer, generative AI is going to be a game changer, is a game
Absolutely.
changer, not going to be, it
Absolutely.
is present. And the way that I've been, is just trying to, what has been on my mind lately has been trying to think through what are the frameworks of success that I see here? Is it, are there going to be way more net new companies that are built on the coattails of generative AI? Or is really generative AI a huge unlock for companies that are currently in existence today that have superpowers, and generative AI is just augmenting those superpowers? And I think it's a little bit of a mix of both, but I think it's probably leans towards the latter, where companies, as long as they're still nimble enough to embrace generative AI and put the spend that's necessary behind it, can augment their superpowers and make them
Yes.
so dominant, and can really accelerate their value add. Those are the companies that are going to be set up for tremendous success. And so
Oh.
a lot of time is going into, interesting, how can we use GPT-4? How can we do things like that? So I don't know. I'm really I think, the early days of, the infrastructure layer has pretty much been laid. And now it's seeing what the intake and absorption rate has been across the ecosystem. So that's fun to watch.
And you're exactly right. I'm seeing it more in my environment on a daily basis. I'm trying to help my son start his small business since he doesn't want to do college. He wants a pet grooming business.
Yeah.
And I asked my chat GPT for the best sources for funding for him. He's special needs business owner. What are the top 7 sources of funding? I had it in seconds. Within minutes, I built a business plan around it, printed it out, and handed it to my wife. I'm like, all right, here's our new project we can work on. Yesterday, I was talking to a client circle, one of the companies I use in the agency for CRM.
Okay.
And they now have Circle AI, where usually if I switch to a new CRM service, I have to write the messages that go out to my customers myself to maintain my tone of communicating to my clients well. With Circle AI, they just give it a line and say, hey, write me a text that sounds like this, and then I can just edit. And I'm thinking, wow, this is easier.
Game changing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I look forward to all the other ways that the AI and generative AI will continue to improve our industry and help us be more efficient.
Yeah.
Katelyn, it's been an amazing pleasure to chat with you. I'm sure we'll do this again. And when I run into you somewhere in one of these insurtech summits, we're going to continue from where we stopped.
I would love that. And I know we will.
Well, thank you so much for making time to join us today on the Recode podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, that's all for today. It's been a great chat with Katelyn Johnson. If you have not picked up a copy of Recode 8 Mind Hacks for the small business owner, make your way to Amazon, grab a copy, and remember, the audiobook will be out shortly. Thanks for listening.